So as a Nintendo fan, I've owned a couple of consoles around the years. And in each one of these consoles, there's been a game that I adored. A game that when I think about the certain console, it's the first one to come to mind. And today I'll be looking at the first one of these games. Yes, today I will be going on a vacation. I've got my tickets, the travel shirt that everyone has to wear, and my old Wii Mini. So let's go. Sooooo Island, an island of many activities.
1 week later.
And today I'll be reviewing all of the activities I did on my trip to Sooooo Island. But first, look at what the locals gave me. A Wiimote. I'll probably give this one to Schlatt. Well now, it's time for me to review all the games in Wii Sports Resort. So get your snacks, your Wiimotes, and no! Because we're starting now with the first minigame. Well, technically in Wii Sports Resort, the first minigame you ever play is the skydiving one, and it's a great introduction to the game. But the first real minigame is Sword Fight. And I think it's the best minigame to start with. The gameplay is fun, and the motion controls actually work, unlike another Wii game.
Looks like we're having a little interference here.
I know you can just win by mass swinging the Wiimote, and honestly, the boxing game in the original Wii Sports had more in-depth gameplay than this one. But you guys read the title, this is a biased video about Wii Sports Resort, so I prefer the sword fighting game more than the boxing game. Also, all the mini games in this have variations, or subcategories. So let's take a look at the ones for this mini game. The first one is a directional cutting game, a bit like Fruit Ninja, but you can just cut the objects from a certain way. This mini game is pretty fun, but not the— Wait, is that Matt? Okay, 100% best mini game in Wii Sports Resort. The second mini game is like a story mode for Sword Fight, but without the story. Now for the second activity, wakeboarding. To be honest, I was never really into this game as a kid, but now that I actually played it, I think it's pretty fun. I know the landings in the game can be pretty glitchy, but while I played, I didn't run into too many problems. The wakeboarding minigame doesn't actually have some sub-minigames to play, but it has some difficulty settings, and the hard mode is actually challenging, which is surprising for a Nintendo game. The third activity is Frisbee. And here's an unpopular opinion, but as much as I love this minigame, most of the time it doesn't really work. I know in this video I'm supposed to be biased with Wii Sports Resort, and as much as I love that game, the Frisbee minigame was making me pretty frustrated. Since throwing a Frisbee in real life on target is really hard, and in Wii Sports Resort it's even way harder because you're not even throwing a real Frisbee. So it's really frustrating to see my Frisbee go off course all of the time, and the frustration is even more apparent in Frisbee Golf, a minigame designed to hit the targets with the Frisbee. Like in this mode, stuff like this can happen. How did that even happen? The fourth activity is archery, and honestly, this is one of my favorite activities in Wii Sports Resort. It's the first minigame where you have to hold the nunchuck, and it works! The nunchuck and Wiimote pair actually work, and they feel like an actual bow and arrow. Like the wakeboarding activity, the variations for this one are just difficulty settings. Oh, and yeah, there are secret fruits you can find all around the place that you can shoot to get extra points, and stamps, which is a nice detail. The next activity is basketball, and this is another mini game that I wasn't too fond of as a kid. And like the Frisbee one, the shooting here is not the best. But after a couple of games, I got a feel for it, and I actually had fun. The variation of this activity is a 3-on-3 game, where you use the buttons on the Wiimote to move your character and you shoot like you would in the normal basketball game. I honestly prefer the original mini game of basketball more than this one. And wait, who is this guy trying to replace Matt? Yeah, my point stands. The next activity is table tennis, and it's one of my favorite mini games of all time in a Wii game. It works so well. The Wiimote translates the feeling of the paddle perfectly, and look, there's Matt. That's what makes a perfect minigame. The variation of this minigame is the return challenges. It's normal table tennis, but with an infinite amount of balls and some soda cans that you can hit for more points. But I basically never play this variation because I enjoyed the OG table tennis with its progression system and Matt. The next two minigames are from the original Wii Sports with some changes, like in golf there are new courses, and in bowling there's an 100 pin mode, which is actually pretty funny to play with, but it's nothing major. The next activity is power cruising, and I never got a feel for this minigame. I know, like I said, this is a biased video about Wii Sports Resort, but I didn't have too much fun with this one. The way you hold the Wiimote and nunchuck for this game is just awkward, and the variation is just the same thing but with an opponent that you gotta beat. That was the first and last minigame in Wii Sports Resort that I didn't really enjoy, but it's fine because the next one is an activity I really enjoyed. Canoeing. The best minigames in Wii Sports Resort are the ones where the Wiimote actually translate the movement of the real thing. Like when the Wiimote actually feels like a ping pong racket or a sword. And for the canoeing minigame, the Wiimote really feels like a paddle. And that's awesome! It feels like I'm really canoeing. And the variation for this one is the same as the wakeboarding one. It's the same game but with an opponent that you have to defeat. The next one is my favorite Wii Sports Resort activity, cycling. I know it has nothing to do with cycling in real life, but this minigame is just fun. I love overswinging the Wiimote and nunchuck and seeing my character turn blue, or just watching the beautiful scenery of Sooooo Island. Also, this is my favorite minigame to play with friends. The variation of this minigame is a versus mode, which doesn't make a lot of sense because in the OG cycling, you're already playing against opponents. But who cares, this is still one of the best minigames in Wii Sports Resort. The next activity is actually 3 activities called air sport. The first one is skydiving. And like I said, this is one of the best ways to start off Wii Sports Resort. The point of this minigame is just to take some pictures with your fellow sportsmen. The next one is island flyover, and this one might seem boring to some people, but it's actually really fun since you can just take in all the Wii Sports Resort lore. And yes, there's actually some lore for Wii Sports Resort and Sooooo Island. The next one is like a variation for Island Flyover, and it's Dogfight. And this is one of my favorite minigames in Wii Sports Resort. Just to play with friends, just to have fun and just kill each other. Well, it's not really killing since it's a Nintendo game, but just shoot each other's balloons. So that was the recap of my trip to Sooooo Island. And it was so much fun and satisfying. Let me know what you guys think of Wii Sports Resort in the comment section down below. I'll be happy to read your opinions. And that's it for me, guys. Don't forget to stay sticky and just have a nice day.